The message arrived while Kong Day was fixing a navigation fault that no one else wanted to touch. The lights in the control room flickered, and his wrist screen chimed with a priority signal. He sighed, wiped grease from his hands, and opened it. The notice was short and formal. He was ordered to report to the Interstellar Diplomatic Authority within 12 hours. No reason was given. No room for refusal. They frowned. He had worked for the authority for 6 years, but he was not important enough for secret meetings. He was a systems engineer, not a politician. Still, when an order came with that kind of seal, you followed it. By the time he reached the authority building, the sun over Sol Prime was already low. The city stretched below in clean lines of steel and light, a symbol of how far humanity had come since first contact. Day used to feel proud of that. Tonight, he felt uneasy. Inside, security was tighter than usual. He was scanned twice and escorted through halls he had never seen before. The walls were smooth and white, almost too perfect, and the air smelled faintly sterile. He was led into a small meeting room. One side of the room was empty. The other side held a single figure. She was not human. Day stopped without meaning to. His escort stepped back and closed the door, leaving him alone with her. The alien woman stood calmly, her hands folded in front of her. She was tall, slightly taller than Day, with pale skin that held a soft shimmer under the lights. Her eyes were dark and deep, reflecting more light than they should. Her hair was long and silver white, falling straight down her back. She wore simple clothing, smooth and dark, with no clear seams. She watched him without blinking. Day swallowed. He had seen aliens before, on screens and from a distance. This was different. This was too close. "You are Kong Day," she said. Her voice was even and clear, with only a small accent. "Yes," Day replied. "And you are?" "Era," she said. "I am here to speak with you." Day shifted his weight. "About what?" Era tilted her head slightly, as if studying him. "About marriage." The word hit him harder than any threat. "I'm sorry," Day said. "I think you have the wrong person." "I do not," Era replied. "My family wants us to get married, human." For a moment, Day wondered if this was a joke, a test, some strange diplomatic trick. He waited for someone to step in and explain. No one did. "You can't be serious," he said. "We just met." "Yes," Era said. "That is correct." Day let out a short laugh. "Look, I don't know what kind of custom this is, but humans don't do this." Era's expression did not change. "Humans have arranged marriages. I have studied them." "Not like this," Day snapped, then stopped himself. He took a breath. "Why me?" Era looked down for a moment before meeting his eyes again. "Because your genetic profile matches the requirements. Because you are unattached. Because your psychological evaluations show high adaptability. And because the authority believes you will comply." That last part stung. "So this isn't really your family asking," Day said. "It's the government." "It is both," Era said. "My people require family approval. Your leaders require political stability." Day ran a hand through his hair. "You're talking like this is already decided." "It is," Era said simply. The door opened and 2 human officials entered. One was a woman in a dark uniform, her posture sharp and controlled. Day recognized her immediately. "Captain Yura," he said. "Kong Day," she replied. "Thank you for coming." She gestured for him to sit. Era remained standing. Captain Yura explained in clear, careful words. The alliance with the Lyran Accord was fragile. Trade routes, shared technology, and mutual defense all depended on trust. Era's people valued family bonds above all else. A union between species would be a powerful symbol. And out of billions of humans, Day said, you chose me. You were the best candidate, Captain Ura replied. And the fastest option. Day felt his chest tighten. You're asking me to give up my life. We are asking you to change it, she said. He looked at Era. She stood quietly, listening, her face calm, but her hands now clenched slightly at her sides. What happens if I say no? Day asked. Captain Ura did not answer right away. Then negotiations will suffer, she said finally, and consequences will follow. For who? For everyone, she said. Silence filled the room. Era spoke again. I did not ask for this either. Day looked at her in surprise. My family believes this union is necessary, Era continued. Refusal would bring shame and loss. You don't want this? Day asked. I accept it, she said. That is different. Something in her voice made Day pause. There was no fear in it, no anger, only duty. He thought of his own family, his parents, proud but distant, his younger sister, Hannah, who always told him he worked too much. None of them knew where he was right now. This is insane, he muttered. Human insanity has saved your species before, Captain Ura said quietly. Day stood up. He paced the room, then stopped in front of Era. If I do this, he said, you don't get to treat me like a tool. Era met his gaze. I would not. And I don't belong to your family, he added. Nor you to mine, she said. We would belong only to the bond. That was somehow worse. Day closed his eyes for a moment. He felt trapped, but he also felt something else. A strange pull. Not toward Era herself, but toward the challenge. Toward the idea that a single human choice might hold the line between peace and collapse. Humans had always been good at standing in impossible places. I need time, he said. You have 48 hours. Captain Ura replied. Era inclined her head. I will wait. As Day left the room, his legs felt unsteady. The city lights outside seemed distant and unreal. His life, once small and clear, had just expanded into the stars. And somewhere beyond Earth, families, human and alien, were already planning a marriage that had not yet begun. Kang Day did not sleep that night. He lay on his bed and stared at the ceiling, watching faint lights from the city move across the walls. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Era standing in that white room, calm and certain, as if his entire world had not just been turned upside down. By morning, messages from the authority filled his wrist screen. Medical checks, legal briefings, cultural orientation. Everything was already moving forward, as if his answer did not matter. He dressed and left his apartment without eating. The transport carried him upward toward the orbital station where Era was staying. Earth grew smaller beneath him, a blue and white curve that suddenly felt fragile. The station was quiet when he arrived. Long corridors stretched out, lined with soft lights and transparent walls that looked into space. Day felt like he was walking into someone else's life. Era was waiting for him in a common chamber. This time she was seated. A thin tablet rested in her hands, covered in shifting symbols. She looked up as he entered. You returned, she said. I said I needed time, Day replied. Not that I agreed. Yes, Era said. But you came. He did not argue with that. They sat across from each other, a low table between them. For a while, neither spoke. Day noticed small details he had missed before. The way Era's fingers moved with careful control. The slow, steady rhythm of her breathing. Captain Ura told me to speak with you, Day said at last, to understand what this really means. Era nodded. That is wise. For you, he continued, marriage is not symbolic. It's permanent. Yes, Era said. Our bonds are formed once. They affect biology, memory, and social standing. Day frowned. So if this fails? It does not, she said. He leaned back. That's not an answer. Era looked down at her hands. Failure would mean exile. For me, the words landed heavily. Day sat forward again. And you're still calm? I was raised to accept necessity, Era replied. Emotion follows later. That was the first time she sounded uncertain. Day rubbed his face. Humans don't work like that. We feel first. We fight the idea before we accept it. I know, Era said. That is why your species is difficult. He almost smiled. They spent the next hours going through shared briefings. They learned about Era's people, how they survived on a harsh world where cooperation meant survival. Individual desire was secondary to group stability. Love, when it came, grew from duty. Era learned about humans, about personal choice, romance, divorce, rebellion. She listened closely, asking simple questions. Why marry if separation is possible? She asked. Because we hope it lasts, they said. Hope matters. She considered that in silence. Later, Day was allowed to bring her to a human section of the station. It was small but warm. People moved freely, laughing, arguing, sharing food. Era paused at the entrance. There is much noise, she said. That means people are comfortable, Day replied. They ate together. Era studied the food carefully before tasting it. Her expression shifted slightly, just enough for Day to notice. You dislike it, he said. It is unfamiliar, she corrected. But not unpleasant. That felt like progress. As they walked, a group of humans passed by. One of them stared too long. Another whispered something sharp under his breath. They felt a surge of anger before Era even seemed to notice. He stepped closer to her without thinking. Is this hostility? Era asked quietly. Some people fear what they don't understand, Day said. Even now. Era looked at him. You did not move away. I'm human, he said. We stand our ground. That night, Day met with Captain Yura again. She laid out timelines, expectations, public reactions. The marriage would be announced soon. Whether he agreed or not, you can still refuse, she said. But the cost will be high. Day knew that was not really a choice. When he returned to his quarters, he found a message from his sister. Hannah. She complained about work, joked about his silence, and told him to visit soon. He stared at the message for a long time. The next day, Era asked to see Earth from the observation deck. They stood side by side, watching clouds drift over oceans. It is beautiful, she said. We fought a lot to keep it that way, Day replied. Would you fight for this bond? Era asked suddenly. He hesitated. I don't know yet, he said honestly. She nodded. That answer is acceptable. Hours later, the decision meeting arrived. Officials waited. Documents were prepared. Day stood before them, his heart pounding. He thought of fear, of duty, of a woman who faced exile without complaint. I will proceed, he said. Era closed her eyes for a brief moment. When she opened them, something had changed. Then we begin, she said. Day did not feel relief. He felt the weight of something new settling into his life. The bond was no longer an idea, it was real. After the decision was made, time began to move faster. Schedules filled Day's days from morning to night. There were lessons, tests, and meetings that seemed to never end. Every step of his life was now connected to Era. They were assigned shared time each day. Not as a couple, the official said, but as partners in preparation. Day thought it was a weak excuse. Still, he showed up. Era greeted him the same way every time, with a small nod and steady eyes. She never touched him unless instructed by custom. That distance felt strange today. Humans filled silence with motion. Era respected it. They began with language practice. Era spoke human speech well, but there were gaps. Day corrected her gently, and she learned fast. When it was his turn to learn her language, he struggled. The sounds were smooth but carried meaning in tone and timing. "You are thinking too much," Era said after he failed again. "That's how humans work," Day replied. She watched him closely. "Then you must learn to stop." He laughed. She blinked and asked why. "That was a joke," he said. "I do not understand," she replied. "That's fine," Day said. "Most humans don't either." Slowly, something shifted between them. The conversations became less formal. Era began asking questions that were not part of the lessons. "Why do humans eat together so often?" She asked during a break. "Because food tastes better when shared," Day said. "And because it gives us time to talk." "Talking achieves no survival goal," Era said. "Sometimes it does," he replied. "Sometimes it just reminds us we're not alone." She was quiet after that. One afternoon, Day brought Era a small gift. It was nothing important, just a thin scarf from a market on Earth. He held it out, unsure. "This is not required," Era said. "I know," he replied. "That's why it's a gift." She touched the fabric carefully. "There is no obligation?" "No," Day said. "You don't owe me anything." She accepted it after a long pause. Later, Day noticed she wore it around her neck. Outside their quiet space, the world was not calm. News reports showed protests on Earth. Some humans feared the alliance. Others hated it. Day avoided watching, but the tension reached the station. One evening, alarms sounded without warning. The lights dimmed, then turned red. Security breach. A voice announced. Day and Era were in the learning chamber when it happened. The door sealed shut. Era stood instantly. "This is not scheduled." "No," Day said. "It's not." The station shook slightly. Day felt his heart race. He moved closer to Era without thinking. "Stay behind me," he said. Era looked at him. "You are unarmed." "I know," he replied. That made her pause. Security forces arrived quickly. The threat was contained, but the message was clear. Someone had tried to make a point. Afterward, Era was required to stay under guard. Day was escorted back to his quarters. The separation felt wrong. He sent her a message later. Simple words, "Are you safe?" Her reply came after a moment. "Yes. You acted without duty." He stared at the screen. That night, he dreamed of Earth burning and stars falling silent. He woke with his heart pounding. The next day, Era asked to continue their time together, despite the risk. The officials hesitated, but allowed it. They met in a quiet observation hall. Space stretched endlessly beyond the glass. "Why did you step forward?" Era asked. "Because you were there," they said. "That is not logical," she replied. "No," he agreed. "It's human." Era studied him for a long time. "My people protect the bond because it is required. You protect before the bond exists." "Sometimes we don't wait," Day said. She nodded slowly. Preparations for the ceremony continued. Clothing was measured. Ritual steps were explained. Day learned how to stand, when to speak, when to remain silent. It felt unreal. During a private moment, Era shared something unexpected. "If this union succeeds," she said, "my memories will change." Day frowned. "Change how?" "Our kind shares emotional memory within family bonds," she explained. "You will influence who I become." The weight of that settled on him. "I'm just a man," he said. "You are human," Era replied. "That is not small." Another message came from Earth. His sister again. "You're hiding something." "Call me." Day did not reply. Instead, he took Era to see a human garden inside the station. Green plants grew under soft light. Water flowed gently. Era reached out and touched a leaf. Life here is protected, she said. Yes, Day replied. Because it's fragile. She turned to him. You treat fragility with care, not rejection. That's how we survived, he said. Days before the ceremony, tension peaked. Another threat was discovered and stopped. The alliance stood on the edge. Era stood before the council and spoke calmly. She spoke of trust, of shared risk, of a human who chose to stand without being ordered. The room listened. When she finished, she looked at Day. Later, alone, she said, I am no longer afraid of exile. Why? He asked. Because even if everything breaks, she said, I have learned something valuable. What? That humans choose. Day felt something warm and heavy in his chest. The bond was still forming, but it was no longer empty. The attack came without warning. Day was in the corridor outside the living quarters when the station lights went out. For half a second, there was only darkness. Then emergency lights flashed on, painting the walls in dull red. The floor vibrated under his feet. A loud impact shook the station. Breach on the lower ring. A voice announced over the system. All personnel remain in place. Day did not remain in place. Era. It was the only thought in his mind. He ran. Security doors were closing as he moved through the corridor. He slid under one just before it sealed shut, scraping his arm, but not slowing down. Alarms screamed around him. People shouted. The calm order of the station broke apart. Era was being kept in a protected section, surrounded by guards. When Day reached the area, smoke filled the air. One wall was cracked open, metal twisted outward. Era! He shouted. He saw her on the floor near the far wall. One of the guards lay still nearby. Day rushed to her side and dropped to his knees. Her eyes were open, but her breathing was shallow. A dark mark spread across her side where debris had struck her. Era, he said again. Stay with me. She looked at him. Her hand moved weakly, touching his sleeve. You should not be here, she whispered. I know, Day said. I don't care. Another explosion shook the station. Pieces of metal fell from the ceiling. Day looked around, panic rising. He tapped his wrist screen. Medical emergency. I need help now. The response was delayed. Systems were damaged. Era's breathing slowed further. Day pressed his hands against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. He had no training for this, but his hands moved anyway. Humans had always learned by doing. Listen to me, he said. You're not dying here. Her eyes focused on his. If I do, she said softly, the bond will fail. Then we won't let it, he replied. He tore a strip of fabric from his sleeve and pressed it tighter. Pain shot through his arm, but he ignored it. Finally, security arrived. They lifted Era onto a stretcher and rushed her away. Day followed until strong hands stopped him. You can't go further, a guard said. Then let me work, Day snapped. I'm a systems engineer. The med bay power is unstable. I can help. There was hesitation. Then Captain Yura appeared. Let him, she said. Day ran again. In the medical bay. Chaos ruled. Lights flickered. Machines powered on and off. Doctors worked fast, their faces tight with focus. Era lay on the center table, unmoving. She's losing stability, one medic said. Her biology is reacting badly. Day moved to the control panel. The system was damaged, but not broken. Give me 3 minutes. He said, no guarantees, the mag replied. Humans don't need guarantees, Day said. Already working, his fingers flew over the controls. He rerouted power, bypassed damaged lines, forced old systems to talk to new ones. Sparks flew. Warnings flashed. Day, Captain Yura said, if this fails. It won't, he said. The machine stabilized. The lights steadied. A soft tone filled the room. "She's responding," a medic said. Day's knees went weak. He leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Era survived the surgery, but she did not wake. Hours passed. Outside the medical bay, officials argued. The attack had been deliberate. A radical human group had tried to destroy the Alliance by killing Era.News spread quickly. On Earth, people watched footage of the damaged station. They saw reports of a human engineer who ignored orders and ran into danger. They did not know any of this. He sat by Era's side, unmoving. When she finally opened her eyes, he was asleep in the chair next to her bed. She watched him quietly. After a moment, she spoke his name, Day. He woke instantly. "You're awake," he said, voice rough. "Yes," she replied. "Because you refused to let me go." He swallowed. "That's not how it works." "It is for humans," she said. She reached for his hand. This time, he did not hesitate. "I accessed the shared memory network," Era continued. "My people are watching." Day stiffened. "And they are confused," she said. "You acted without command, without bond, without certainty." "That's just what we do," he said. Era held his hand tighter. "They call it reckless." He smiled faintly. "We call it care." Captain Yura entered quietly. "The Alliance Council has reviewed the incident," she said. "Public opinion is shifting. Because I broke rules?" Day asked. "Because you proved something," she replied. "That humans protect others, even when it costs them." Era looked at Day with new depth in her eyes. "The bond reacted," she said, "before it was complete." Day frowned. "Is that bad?" "No," she said. "It is rare." Outside the window, stars drifted silently. The station repairs continued. The attackers were captured. The Alliance did not fall. Not something else had taken its place. Not trust. As Era rested, Day stayed. For the first time, he did not feel trapped by duty. He felt chosen. Recovery took time. The station returned to order slowly, like a body healing after a deep wound. Walls were repaired. Systems were reset. Guards stood at every entrance. Yet the air felt different now. Kong Day noticed it first in the way people looked at him. Some nodded with respect. Others watched him with quiet curiosity. He tried to ignore it. Era remained in the medical wing for several days. Her people required careful monitoring after trauma. Day stayed nearby whenever he was allowed. When he was not, he waited. One evening, Captain Yura joined him near the observation window. "You changed things," she said. "I just did what I had to," Day replied. "That is what scares some people," she said, "and inspires others." Era was released soon after. She walked slowly, supported by medical bands along her side. When she saw Day waiting, her step steadied. "You should be resting," he said. "I am," she replied. "This is rest." They were allowed private time for the first time since the attack. No guards stood inside the room. No officials watched. Ira sat across from Day, her posture relaxed in a way he had not seen before. "My family has spoken," she said. Day tensed. "About the bond?" "Yes," Era replied. "They asked if I wished to proceed." He searched her face. "And I said yes," she said. "Not because they demanded it. Because I chose it." The words stayed with him. "I should tell you something," Day said after a moment. "You don't owe me anything." "What I did wasn't a contract." Era inclined her head. "I know. That is why it matters." News from Earth continued to change. Protests faded. Support grew. Humans saw the footage of the attack again and again. They saw a human stand between danger and someone who was not his own god. It felt familiar to them. The ceremony was rescheduled. This time, it was smaller, simpler, No grand speeches. No heavy symbolism. Just two people standing between stars. They wore a plain formal suit. Era wore a flowing garment from her world, light and soft, marked with patterns that shifted slowly like breath dot as they stood together. They felt calm. Era spoke first, as her custom required. She spoke of shared paths, of learning, of choice made freely. They spoke next. His words were simple. "I don't know the future," he said, "but I know I will face it with you. Not because I have to, because I want to." The bond formed quietly. There was no flash of light, no sudden change, just a warmth that settled between them, steady and real. Era reached for his hand. Afterward, there was no celebration hall, no crowd. They stood together at the observation window, watching Earth turn below. "This is where you come from," Era said. "Yes," they replied. "And now, so do you." Her people observed from afar. They did not interfere. They learned dot in the weeks that followed. The alliance strengthened. Trade resumed. Shared research began. Human adaptability mixed with alien stability. Era adjusted to human life slowly. She learned humor, even if she did not always understand it. She learned the comfort of silence shared willingly. They learned patience. He learned how deep duty could run without resentment. He learned that strength did not always shout dot one day. They finally called his sister. Hannah stared at the screen, eyes wide. "You married an alien?" "Yes," he said. She laughed. Then she smiled. "That sounds like you." Era listened nearby. Later, she asked, "Was that approval?" Day nodded. "In human terms, yes." They visited Earth together. Era walked under open sky for the first time. She felt wind on her face and grass under her feet. "It feels exposed," she said. "It is," they replied. "That's why we protect it." Era understood that. On the anniversary of the attack, a memorial was held. Not just for the damage, but for what had almost been lost. They stood beside Era as leaders spoke. Humans and aliens stood together, no longer separated by fear. Captain Yura approached them afterward. "You two became more than a treaty," she said. Era answered before Day could. "We became a choice." That word spread. Across systems, humans were studied again. Not for strength alone, not for technology, but for something harder to measure. The willingness to step forward, the courage to choose. Late one night, Day and Era sat together in quiet. Stars filled the window. "Do you regret this?" Day asked. Era leaned against him, careful but certain. "No, I am more myself than before." He smiled. For the first time, the bond felt complete, not because it was required, but because it was wanted.